some of the better journalists that we cover, Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Monte, and Max Blumenthal, they're all in this story that we're covering on Bellingcat, because this is where it started, and this is the clip.
Right-wing crank by the day. And we get to see this play out because one of the world's richest men is now the biggest troll. And he spent $44 billion so everyone could see his own case of brainworms on full display. The core of his particular kind of familiar right-wing internet-inspired radicalization is this kind of chasing of conspiracy theories, creation of an alternate, elaborate set of facts whenever the world produces events that are ideologically inconvenient. It's like Trump's big lie, which is the biggest example of this, but it's about everything big and small. So take this, for example, the ideological leanings of the shooter who murdered 8 people, including little kids, at an outlet mall in Allen, Texas, nearly 2 weeks ago. And shortly after the horrific massacre, the New York Times identified the shooter's apparent social media profile, reporting his profile praised Hitler and referenced neo-Nazi websites. NBC News even confirmed many of those same details later that same day, uncovered even more vile, racist, and anti-Semitic posts. And then Eric Toller of the award-winning investigative outlet Bellingcat uncovered what appeared to be the shooter's social media post. It was on a Russian social media site. He had a jacket with a right-wing death squad insignia.
So if you didn't hear what he said, let's take it back. Listen to the description. He calls Bellingcat, the description of Bellingcat. Let's listen.
Racist and anti-Semitic posts. And then Eric Toller of the award-winning investigative outlet Bellingcat uncovered what appeared to be the shooter's social media post. It was on a Russian social media site. He had a jacket with a right-wing death squad insignia on it. Pretty big clue. He signed off one of his posts saluting Hitler, Hail Hitler, another pretty big clue. But if there was any lingering doubt about his politics, here are the photos of the guy. The apparent tattoos he had. Yes, that is the SS emblem and a swastika. This is not an edge case. And Bellingcat is not some fringe outlet. They are actually a remarkable outfit, award-winning, internationally renowned organization. But according to Elon Musk, this whole thing was just some elaborate conspiracy theory. He accused, baselessly, Bellingcat of specializing in psychological operations or psyops on Twitter. And then, after shown to be wrong, he basically doubled down.
After shown to be wrong. So this is what Elon Musk tweets out. Didn't that story come from Bellingcat, which literally specializes in psychological operations? I don't want to hurt their feelings, but this is either the weirdest story ever or a very bad psyop. That was May 9th that he tweeted out and where this comes from. So let's go back just slightly to hear a little more what he says.
Of specializing in psychological operations or psyops on Twitter. And then, after shown to be wrong, he basically doubled down, elaborated on this conspiracy theory to CNBC.
When you link to somebody who's talking about the guy who killed children in a mall in Allen, Texas, and you say something like it might be a bad psyop, I'm not quite sure what you meant, but...
Oh, in that particular case, there was somehow that's
so. I wanted to play it before I started laughing. So this is a clear propaganda tactic where they'll show a clip of a person stuttering or fumbling over their words. They use it a lot when they're trying to show a person as crazy conspiracy theorists. They'll use that. They'll be talking, yeah, he's blah, 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 and he'll say this, and they'll say, and he thinks this, and they'll cut to the clip. It's all to give the impression, see, this is a bumbling idiot. Now, Elon Musk could be that. I'm not saying he's not, but that is the tactic that is being used here by Chris Hayes and his producer and so his whole team. We'll come back to that video, but that is hilarious. I thought that was hilarious to me, and I wanted to play it up until the awkward pauses there. Let's go to Glenn Greenwald first and get what he says about Bellingcat. This is all sort of around this tweet. Let's go to this tweet first. This guy, CIA friendly, let's use that. CIA friendly Elliot Higgins tweets this: journalist, next time Elon Musk falsely accuses Bellingcat of being a psyop on TV on your TV show, maybe push back a little and ask why he thinks that. That's what Elliot Higgins says. And then based on that, this person, Timothy Snyder, says Bellingcat is a treasure trove of hugely important investigative journalists. Yes, that's what he said. And he's quote tweeting Elliot Higgins. Now, to where we want to go to, and that is Glenn Greenwald's tweet, because I need to show you that backstory to show you what Glenn says about Bellingcat being a treasure trove of hugely important investigative journalists. Glenn Greenwald says that Bellingcat is funded by the U.S. government's CIA adjacent arm, the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, which we're going to refer to that in another tweet, and EU government agencies is well documented, including in its own financial forms. Of course, its biggest fans are those whose views fully aligned with U.S. foreign policy, which Timothy Snyder's does. And then Glenn goes on to say, few things are more revealing than the fact that the outfit funded by the CIA propaganda arm and EU government agencies and Soros is not only considered a news outlet by Western journalists, but the one they most revere. Its full alignment and all but explicit access. Right here, income from other nonprofit organizations, National Endowment for Democracy, EU listed there. Funding and partnership. Bellingcat currently receives grants from the following organizations: EU, declassified UK, National Endowment for Democracy has funded groups such as Bellingcat, Index on Censorship, Article 19, Finance Uncovered, and the Thomson Reuters Foundation. Former CIA officer tells Declassified the National Endowment for Democracy is a vehicle for U.S. government propaganda. That's Glenn Greenwald with the receipts here. And then it says, oh, wow, judging by replies, Bellingcat propagandists have convinced their followers that it's Russia propaganda to believe their funders, the National Endowment for Democracy, is an arm of the U.S. government and CIA, which everybody already knows that. Glenn continues on to say propaganda is enabled by historical ignorance. Propaganda is enabled by historical ignorance. From the well-known Kremlin outlet, ProPublica, that's a joke. In the frequently asked questions on its sites, National Endowment for Democracy acknowledges its ongoing relationship with lawmakers, saying that its continued funding is dependent on the continued support of the White House and Congress. Alan Weinstein, a former acting president of National Endowment of Democracy and one of the authors of the study that led to its creation, told David Ignatius in 1991 interview, quote, a lot of what we do today was done covertly. Listen to what he's saying here. This is what he's saying about the National Endowment for Democracy. A lot of what we do today, we as the the NED, a lot of what we do was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. The biggest difference is that when such activities are done overtly, the flat potential is close to zero. Openness is its own protection. I guess that's something else. So, I mean, love these threads that, you know who does these threads? The three journalists that we're talking about today, Glenn Greenwald, Max Blumenthal and Aaron Monte. They all do these very informative sort of threads. Now let's go to Aaron Monte's tweet on the same subject. Now, Aaron is quote tweeting Jake Tapper because Jake Tapper also speaks on this. And let's bring up Jake Tapper's tweet. So it's the same clip. This is from I think CNBC, the business channel, where they have the same clip that we kind of spoke about. Jake Tapper quote tweets that and says, Bellingcat is a great journalistic organization. Wow. What does that say to say our media people are calling a CIA sort of cutout organization or adjacent organization, I should say, is this great journalistic organization? Conversely, Musk once linked to a deranged article about Paul Pelosi in the Sacramento Observer, a nutjob website that claimed in 2016 that Hillary had died and had been replaced by a body double. That's Jake Tapper. But Aaron Monte comes in and says this to Jake Tapper. Bellingcat is a NATO state psyop, as their own state partners admit. A leaked report for the UK government states Bellingcat was somewhat discredited both by spreading disinformation itself and by being willing to produce reports for anyone willing to pay. And this is the receipt. And here's that leaked document. And you can see in this last part here, other concerns were that the CBDA and ISD had analytical shortcomings and that Bellingcat was somehow discredited both by spreading disinformation itself and by being willing to produce reports for anyone willing to pay. That's Bellingcat. Just amazing to me. Just amazing to me. Let's do a couple of more tweets here. While the available facts support Bellingcat's finding about the Allen gunman, Musk is correct about the group overall. Media cheerleading omit that Bellingcat is funded by NATO states and spreads propaganda that advances their foreign policy goals. And that's a great point that he's making. Just because Musk, a dum-dum ruling class member, is wrong on the part of the information they put out on this particular story, doesn't mean that Bellingcat is not a NATO state, as he called it, funded by the NATO state. Let's now go to this one here. Glenn Greenwald again. Glenn says, for decades, the New York Times casual description of Bellingcat funders' National Endowment for Democracy was this, quote, created to do in the open what the CIA has done surreptitiously for decades, end quote. Now, like every fact liberal dislike, it's Russian propaganda. This is what they said. And he has the receipt. Love these. Love these. Now let's go to the video, and we'll end here with this video. This is was put out on the Gray Zone. Is Bellingcat a psyop, as Elon Musk said? And here is Aaron and Matt speaking on it here.
I mean, is it fair to say they're the most celebrated media outfit in the West?
Yes, and certainly the most whitewashed, because nobody ever acknowledges who funds them, which is the U.S. government and various Western cutouts and spook firms that profit off of the Syria dirty war. They actually recently published the first time. For years, it's been secret how much they get from the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the U.S. government's regime change arm. They've kept that totally secret. If you try to search for it on the NED database, Bellingcat wouldn't even come up. But Bellingcat finally acknowledged it, and the NED is their top funder.
Yeah, I'll throw that up on screen. Here's Bellingcat's financials. National Endowment for Democracy gave them $212,000 in 2021. The National Endowment for Democracy is the regime change arm of the U.S. government, has been involved in fomenting coup attempts from Venezuela to Nicaragua to Hong Kong to pretty much anywhere there's a color revolution.
And then this is some of their private company funding. And on that list, and Kit Klarenberg has a great article on this up at the Gray Zone from a few months ago. So on the list includes Adam Smith International and Chemonics. And these firms, you might know Adam Smith International because that's a firm that came to fame during the Iraq War when they were heavily involved in the Bush administration's plans to remake Iraq into like a neoliberal paradise. And I believe they're also involved in Afghanistan too. So they're basically war profiteers, along with Chemonics as well, a firm that does similar kind of operations. And Zinc Network, that is essentially, that's a British state cutout, right? Zinc.
Yep, it's an intelligence cutout.
Yeah,
they sponsor, like in Syria, they set up the AstroTurf media organizations to push the armed opposition's narrative.
Yeah, so that's who's funding Bellingcat. It's U.S. government organizations directly, other Western state cutouts, and then companies that profit off of these same government's dirty wars abroad. That is who's supporting Bellingcat, and that never ever gets mentioned in media. They're supposed to be portrayed as this scrappy group of upstarts who just love to use Google Images and other data to uncover war crimes, and really they're just doing the bidding of the people who pay them.
I kind of went into the early days of Elliot Higgins, and it tells you why, for example, foreign policy says Bellingcat says what U.S. intelligence can't, and that CIA officers say they love what Bellingcat does. But this is like a limited hangout here. This is them saying, oh, we just love what they do because we can't openly do it, as if they're not instrumentalizing Bellingcat in any way or coordinating with them. But you look back at Bellingcat's history, and it goes back to Elliot Higgins' days. He was a gamer, right? And he was known as Brown Moses. And he pretends to be like this stay-at-home Mr. Mom who stumbled onto these international intrigues because he was just a master of Google Earth. And he's surrounded by just these maverick.
Hey, you remember Elliot Higgins? He was one of the tweets. He was the genesis to one of the quote tweets. It all went back to Elliot Higgins. I think it was Aaron Mate quote tweeted Snyder, and Snyder quote tweeted Elliot Higgins. This is the Elliot Higgins dude he's speaking of.
Data disruptors who have this hunger for the truth and an uncanny ability to find it with just a few keystrokes. And he gets puffed by the New York Times, Washington Post, New York Review of Books. There's this Dutch documentary about Bellingcat, which portrays them as just like these grassroots heroes. Claire Wardle, she's one of these disinformation figures from First Draft Media, which is a Pierre Omidyar operation that works with Bellingcat, and Omidyar has sponsored Bellingcat too. The Intercept had a series of $5,000 per person training sessions with Bellingcat, which was a backdoor way of paying them. And they cite them all the time at the Intercept. Claire Wardle said this in the documentary, this Dutch documentary about Bellingcat: we need professional experts like Bellingcat.
Did you hear him say? Let me make sure they said that again. Did he say they cite Bellingcat all the time in the Intercept? Did he say that? Because Aaron Good, along with other people, have said that the Intercept is highly likely that it's a intelligence cutout. So let me just make sure I heard that correctly.
Per person training sessions with Bellingcat, which was a backdoor way of paying them. And they cite them all the time at the Intercept. Claire Wardle said this in the documentary.
Yeah. That's what he said. Let's go back some more here. Get the full.
Omidyar has sponsored Bellingcat too. The Intercept had a series of 5,000.
Oh, I hear what he said. Now I hear what he said. He said the head financier, the owner of, he said his name, Omidyar. That's what he said. Okay, so now I get it.
Figures from First Draft Media, which is a Pierre Omidyar operation that works with Bellingcat, and Omidyar has sponsored Bellingcat too. The Intercept had a series of $5,000 per person training sessions with Bellingcat, which was a backdoor way of paying.
I wonder what Ryan Grimm thinks of Bellingcat.
Them, and they cite them all the time at The Intercept. Claire Wardle said this in the documentary, this Dutch documentary about Bellingcat. We need professional experts like Bellingcat who can help audiences navigate this information space. Do we? The reality is that
that's basically saying we need somebody to help us navigate, propagandize people. That's how, I would take that.